Performing their rite, their dark dance of decay. The worms in my bin are red wigglers, the perfect breed for the worm bin scenario and known to be highly reproductive. I bought a pound of them and put them in a bin full of wet newspaper scrap bedding and let them set up camp. In the meantime, I did a little more research. This is what I learned. Worms are hermaphrodites with testes, ovaries, and a sexual organ called the clitellum. That's right, worms have a clit, a small band of flesh. It's a little closer to the head than to the tail, and the source of all sex secretions and sexual behavior. Here's how they do it. Attracted by glandular secretions, two worms get together, and joined by the mucus, they trade sperm, depositing it in each other's sperm Sawyer sacs. After the worms both come, they separate while their clitella secrete another fluid that hardens to make a cocoon. Then the worms slide their cocoons along their bodies, depositing both eggs and sperm inside. As the cocoon passes over the worm's first segment, the ends close off to form an egg sac that will hatch two or more baby worms. Sounds all very biologically efficient, but I felt that there were a few pieces missing. How did these worms meet? What happened afterwards? Did they see each other again? I'm not asking because I'm looking for a love story, but just because we need a narrative here for the worm bin and this whole local slow food DIY bicycle lifestyle of energy decline. We need to learn how to make connections and inspire values, and maybe I'm looking for a love story. When you take the lid off the bin, condensation drips off the bottom of it, and a dark atmosphere rises to meet you. A pale forest of fungi fruit blooms across the rich mists of castings and bedding. The entire surface undulates amidst the rapid micro-process of being born and dying. Hundreds of worms and their countless micro-orgastic minions burrowing, eating, and reproducing. They dance a digestive earth dance of incessant writhing, quiet, luscious, and ravenous. You reach your bare hand into the vermicompost, a moist mixture of decomposing food, worm shit, and wet newsprint, and pull up a chunk of black earth. Worms work their way through your fingers and down your hand and drop back into the bin, their segmented bodies compressing and distending. Your clod of compost crumples with a sparkle of springtails and mold mite. You unearth a mango pit buried beneath the castings, and as a dozen red wigglers trail out of its slimy, half-digested shell, you feel the sensory breath of primordial chaos. But not chaos in the sense of disorder and disruption, although there seems to be a lot of that, but chaos, that state of undifferentiated non-being from which all forms evolve and dissolve. And the worms themselves seem to be masters of chaos, and within their guts, they write an alchemical formula balancing decay and rebirth. Like the great alchemists, they turn excrement into gold. All this talk of magic and alchemy and chaos might be misplaced religious fervor, and I'm sorry for all the anthropomorphizing. These are annelids, not the Dalai Lama. But what these worms do is a great example of the Tao, and their mastery, albeit unconscious, is pure, uncluttered by the lust for results or moral convictions. These worms are free spirits, polyamorous dumpster divers performing the great work of the ages, even if they're not conscious of it in a human suffering kind of way. And maybe they're having fun too. Take our lovers from earlier. They meet one morning nibbling on some coffee grounds, all sprout out and taken by each other's secretions. They have a go of it, and they take their time, rubbing their clitella together and getting all wet. Pressed close together, they become one in flesh, and in that unity, completely glazed in mucus, they both come. They undulate together for a while before separating and laying their cocoons, gently peeling away from each other, segment by segment. There's another part of the story too. Having slothed their cocoons, the worms go out to eat, this melon rind they both know about. And after they get there and start eating, they end up fucking other worms and eventually lose track of each other. Their kids grow up and fuck other worms and maybe fucking each other or their parents. And on some level, that's a sad story, but you could also think about it this way. The worms never try to manipulate each other's emotions or ask their partner to change. There are no messy breakups or drawn-out regrets. Benefiting from a simpler nervous system, they could meet again several worm years later, and it would be like nothing had changed. Maybe it's another clump of coffee grounds, and you've got Al Green on the stereo. Maybe wandering the dark recesses of eternal night, their glandular secretions just get the best of them. Maybe their little light-sensitive anteriors bump together over an apple core. there's a moment of pheromonal recognition, and maybe deep within their segments stirs the memory of that first time.